What is there to fear? Nothing. Fear is what controls us.
Normal is only what we normally experience.
There's another way of looking at the world. This global conspiracy that I've been exposing for 3 decades is basically the hijacking of human perception. World governments are controlled by a reptilian, non-human race. I've been saying that since the 90s.
I haven't seen a shapeshift. Have you?
I've seen eyes change from round pupil to slit pupil. When someone like me is questioning everything, mainstream society is going to see you as mad.
David Icke.
I'm delighted that there's so much laughter in the audience tonight.
But no, they're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
All that ridicule was fantastic because it set me free of the prison that most people live in, the fear of what other people think.
I believe and agree with 90% of what you're saying. We are all one.
Infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of.
This week on the show, we have Mr. David Icke, who since the 1990s is known as a professional conspiracy theorist. He's written over 20 books, filmed over 10 DVDs, and regularly sells out arenas like Wembley for his 10-hour shows. And look, David is controversial. He thinks the royal family are a bunch of reptilian shapeshifters, and I can't agree with that or a lot of other things he says, but his basic message is very London real, and that is that we all need to wake the fuck up and stop taking this whole vision of what we think is reality as the truth we've been taught since kids. Everything has been stacked against us, the education system, politics, science, media, everything. And I love his concept of awake. And so that's why you need to plug in here and see what's really happening. And of course, what's happening at London Real? Well, inside the Academy, we're about to kick off our Business Accelerator, which will take you in 8 weeks from no idea to a business with real revenues. So check that out because the emails are coming soon. And now I leave you with the incredibly intelligent, wildly controversial, but very smart Mr. David Icke.
London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level, together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is David Icke, the English writer and public speaker known since 1990s as a professional conspiracy theorist. calling yourself a full-time investigator into who and what is really controlling the world. As a former footballer, BBC Sports television presenter, and spokesman for the Green Party, your interview on Terry Wogan's show in '91 turned you from a respected household name into a laughingstock across the country. You are now the author of over 20 books and over 10 DVDs, and have lectured in over 25 countries, speaking live for up to 10 hours to huge audiences, filling stadiums as big as Wembley Arena. Your latest book, Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told, is 700 pages, packed with ideas from, in your words, the madman who has been proven right again and again and again. David, welcome to London Real.
Thank you, Brian.
Before we get started, what is it like coming to London, and what does this city kind of represent to you, and what's the vibes when you get to a place like this?
Well, I live on the Isle of Wight. See, I've lived on the Isle of Wight since 1982. So every time I come to London, it's so even the number of times I've been here and the years that I worked here, it's still a bit of a culture shock. You know, it's all people, movement, and stuff like that. And it's I like London. I like Londoners, but I don't like what goes on here because London is one of the great centres of this web of deceit and manipulation. And in so many ways, America is, yes, it's important in what goes on in the world, but in so many ways, America fires the gun, but the bullets are loaded in Europe and in places like London, not by the British government, of course, but by the centre of the secret society web globally, which is fundamentally connected to Europe and to London. So I don't like what goes on here, and the British establishment is not something I care for, to say the least, or have since I was a kid. I've always questioned authority. I always feel that authority should command respect by its actions, not demand it just because it's authority. But that seems to be the way things happen and the way things work.
You start the book in a really interesting way, and I just kind of wanted to ask you why you just started to go there. But you said that, and you kind of go back to that Wogan interview, and you said, you know, mention your name then, it was enough to get a laugh. With no joke necessary, I was the joke, but as it turns out, they were the joke all along. And then you went on to say that in madness, to a collective madness looks like madness, but it's actually could be normality when that collective is actually a little bit mad themselves.
Well,
what's it like to look back on 30 years and see all this in perspective?
Well, you know, I do look at the world like that. You know, if you're born into a crazy place and you're brought up in the crazy place and you become an adult in the crazy place and all you've ever known in your life is a crazy place, then to you, crazy is normal. And when someone comes from outside or has started to see it from inside and says, actually, this is a crazy place, well, you are seen as crazy because you're not normal. You're not the normal, that is actually madness, that people have become used to. And this is the thing, Brian, you know. What is normal? Normal is only what we normally experience. So if you are living in the outback of Australia, your normal is never seeing anyone pass your house, never seeing a vehicle. But if you're born in downtown London or live here, your normal is never not seeing vehicles and people everywhere. And so when a vehicle passes someone in the outback, they say, "Oh, look, there's a car. That's not normal." And then someone walks down an empty London street and they say, "Oh dear, what's going on? That's not normal." Normal is only what we normally experience. And thus, if we live in a crazy place, then that's what we normally experience. And this is how things are. And you're born into a world. And when you come into the world, it's got great relevance for what's going on now, actually, this. Then you take the world to be as it is when you arrive. So you come into a crazy place, but, well, this is how it is. So you don't see it as crazy. And therefore, when someone like me is questioning everything about the crazy place and seeing if it stands up to scrutiny, and most of it doesn't, then, of course, mainstream society is going to see you as mad. I take that as a compliment. It's one of the things I say in the book. To be called mad by an idiot, as I put it, is a compliment. And I've been called mad by many idiots over the years, I can tell you. Many of them journalists, funnily enough. But it's just something you have to live with, and you have to come to terms with and accept. When you're challenging normality, then that which has accepted normality to be the real world is going to see you as crazy. Can't be any other way. Thing is, though, and I found this over the last nearly 30 years, if what you say has validity, and you keep saying it, despite all the abuse and all the ridicule, you keep saying it. If it has validity, that's the key. If it doesn't, it won't go anywhere. But if it does, eventually it will be shown to be so. And that's the process that I've been through. It's nothing like completed yet, but it's moving that way, where world events are concentrating people's minds on the fact that the world isn't like they thought it was, and they don't like the way the world's going. They feel uneasy about it, and that has got people to, in greater numbers, to look at what I've written in the past, which is basically saying the world that we have now and we're going deeper into is the one that's been planned all along. This is the basis of what I've been trying to get across all these years. The world is not random. The world is moving in the direction it is because it's been planned to do that. This is why Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, 1932, and George Orwell, Eric Blair as he was really called, with 1984, published in 1948, that's why they've been so incredibly accurate in predicting the way the world is going, because they weren't coming totally from their imagination. Because this plan for the global Orwellian state of total control, which is daily coming in, I mean, look around, it's not been planned for 5 years or 10 years. It's been planned for a long, 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 long time.
What do you see when you see the world today, and what should we be focused on? What are the big things that you see as, okay, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening?
Well, what I'm seeing is more and more people beginning to question what they've not questioned before. That is incredibly encouraging. And I've just finished a world speaking tour over the last 18 months. I've been all over the world. It's happening everywhere. And it's not just the numbers, it's the kind of people, what I would call system people. You'd never think would ever question the system, but they are. So, because in the end, this global conspiracy that I've been exposing for 3 decades is basically the hijacking of human perception. Because if there's a few of you, and compared with the target population of 7.5 billion, something like that now, the number of people in full knowledge of what they're doing is tiny.
Hundreds, thousands.
Thousands maximum. At the core, hundreds at the core. At the core of the core, even less. And the rest of the structure is fiercely compartmentalized. So people are daily different parts of this global web structure playing a part in pushing the world in the direction I'm talking about, to this centralized world dictatorship, without realizing that's what they're doing. It's a tiny, tiny number. So given the mathematics, you can't physically control your target population. There's not enough of you. Yes, you can do it through people in uniform, which is manipulating the target population to police the target population, but you can't do it en masse. What you need to do is control the perceptions of the population, because perception is everything. Perception dictates what you believe, what you don't believe, what you'll challenge, what you won't challenge, what you'll accept, you won't accept, support, won't accept, support, everything. Once they've got your perceptions, they've got you, and they've got your life, and they've got the collective perception. They have humanity. This is why they want to control the information that people receive, and to marginalize alternative ways of looking at the world, because where do perceptions come from? They come from information received. It might be a personal experience, information, or it might be the 10 o'clock news. But with most people, it's going to be the 10 o'clock news, but it's information. So if you want people to have a certain perception of a world event, the world in general, of who we are and the nature of reality, then control what people receive, and then you'll control their perception. When I look at the world, I see vast numbers of people who are perceptually programmed. And when I break it down in the book, when you look at a human life, it's basically a perceptual programming and download from cradle to grave. You come out of the womb and immediately you're influenced by your parents in terms of your perceptions. And they're not being malevolent, most of the time anyway, the vast majority, but they've been through the system you're about to go through, the process you're about to go through. They've bought it, accepted it as normal, accepted the crazy place to be sane, and therefore, out of wanting to do right for you, they'll pass those perceptions on to you. And then, take a deep breath, take a step back, look at it again. When you think about it, Brian, you come out of the womb, and within 4 years, you've only just got here. You're sitting at a desk with an authority figure representing the state's version of everything in front of you, telling you when you have to be there, when you can leave, when you can speak, when you can go to the toilet, when you can eat, what is, what isn't, what's possible, what's not possible, and the nature of everything. And this goes on all the way through your formative years, into higher education, if that's where you go. And it's a download of normal, a perception of normal. What I call it the postage stamp consensus. It's a narrow band of sense of the possible, which has basically been repeated, one of the greatest forms of mind control, repetition, all the way through your formative years. You then go out from there into the institutions. You become a journalist, you become a politician, you become a doctor, you become a scientist, you become a CEO, whatever. And you take with you into those institutions this core version of normal. And when you go as a young person into those institutions are already pillars, solidified concrete pillars of the same sense of normal. So now you've left school, but where you're working is still confirming to you that the madhouse is sane and normal is how things are. A journalist who's doing a story on a medical condition will not go to a complementary practitioner who may have had great success in treating the particular ailment they're writing about. They'll go to a doctor, and the doctor will give him the song sheet, postage stamp consensus version of that problem.
And so normal are kind of what we believe about medicine,
everything.
Capitalism, government, all these things are these normals that we've been programmed.
Because it's basically, Brian, all people here. I call it the mainstream everything. The mainstream media, mainstream science, mainstream medicine, mainstream journalism. They're all unknowing, most of them, the vast majority, agents of the postage stamp consensus. Then you add the fact that the global media, now 24/7, is reporting world events constantly, in all their multiple different ways, from the same postage stamp normal. So, people like me who left the postage stamp a long time ago and it passed over the horizon a long time ago, we're crazy, not by breaking down what we're saying, but by reflex action, because that's not normal, that's not on the postage stamp. Then you look at politics, and we got a choice between left, right, and centre, what's called the political class. That's very, very true, political class. But I would call it something else. It's the postage stamp consensus political class, because the left in politics is on the left of the postage stamp, the centre somewhere in the centre, and the right's on the right of the postage stamp. But they're all on the postage stamp, still coming from this perception of normal that is about, use another analogy, about the size of a pea.
So it's the illusion of choice.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have peer pressure, because all those people who, the vast majority, have accepted this download of normal, like with the blinkers on. I have no problem with that. If you want to give your mind away to someone else's perceptual program, fine. The problem comes when those people think that they can then dictate, ridicule, intimidate those that have a different view. Because that's psychological fascism for me. If we're going to have a discourse, we should have all opinions in the discourse. But this is not what happens. The postage stamp consensus is policed by those that have downloaded it and accepted it. For a long time, I've used the analogy of sheep and the sheepdog. People laugh at sheep because they follow the one in front and they follow the shepherd, and then they run away from the sheepdog, symbolic of fear. But humans have out-sheep the sheep. We don't even need a sheepdog. We police each other. You can't say that. What will your mother say? What will the people at work say? I don't care. I don't care what they say. They have a right to believe what they believe, but actually, funnily enough, so do I, even if it's different. So the stadium in which this control of humanity is played out is in human perception. And what's happened over the last few years, because when I started out nearly 30 years ago, there was no alternative media. For young people today, they might find this kind of seriously ancient, but unbelievable. But when I started out doing what I do, you communicated by printing off leaflets and handing them out in the street. There was no internet. But as this has grown, and the internet has grown, there has been, and this is the key, there has been an alternative source of information to the postage stamp consensus. Now, to be honest, I think that one of the drawbacks, or not drawbacks, no, one of the limiting things about the alternative media is that much of that still comes from the postage stamp consensus. It might be right beyond the far edge, but it's still on the postage stamp consensus. This is why much of the alternative media dismisses and has ridiculed me over the years as much as the mainstream has. So I don't think it goes far enough in delving into things like the nature of reality, which has fundamentally importance to human freedom. But when you look at how this alternative information has actually given people another way of looking at the same thing, another way of looking at 9/11, another way of looking at the banking system, another way of looking at terrorist attacks and what they use to justify. And people have got more streetwise. Some of us have talked in depth about the nature of reality itself, and people have gone, hold on, maybe the world's not like I thought it was. And what this has done has, not in its entirety, but it's been massively influential in triggering this gathering reassessment of what people perceive about the world, about themselves, about world events. And that's why now we're seeing this war on freedom of speech. We're seeing the Silicon Valley giants in the devil's playground, more and more algorithmically controlling the flow of information, using hoaxes like fake news, because they don't want this information circulating, because their perceptual imprisonment is being unraveled by alternative information. And we are now at a point where the efforts to suppress alternative information are going to get hysterical. They already are.
Is that manifested in political correctness?
Political correctness is quite simply getting the target population to silence itself. That's what it is. And, you know, as I've said, this plan has been around a long time, and it's been incrementally introduced step by step, what I call the totalitarian tiptoe, and every step has been projected and promoted as unconnected to the other steps. But when you start seeing patterns, you can see it so.
But they didn't plan on the alternative media, or did they?
Well, yeah, I'll come to that. Okay. I think they were surprised by it, but that's an interesting point, an interesting story. But what I was talking about there was the way this has been incrementally done and has been brought in step by step by step, and where it's meant to end is with the total control of human perception. Up to this point, they have manipulated human perception by manipulating the information people receive. The plan is to go beyond that, where they are the perception. And what I'm talking about, of course, is artificial intelligence, which brings us back to the devil's playground, Silicon Valley, because that is increasingly the center. In the shadows is where it's coming from, but in terms of the world that you can see, Silicon Valley is becoming the center of global control. Not only is it driving, people will be shocked to see how deep Google, oh, it's just a search engine, and Facebook, oh, it's just a social media platform. To see how deep they are in the transhumanist agenda of connecting the human brain to artificial intelligence, so that artificial intelligence becomes the human mind. And that's not me pulling this out of the ether. I'm quoting there a Google executive, Ray Kurzweil, one of the global PR men for Frankenstein.
Is he a Google exec? I know he's at Singularity University.
He's a Google exec at the Singularity University. Okay. And he has said that by 2030, and that's a date, a year that keeps coming up again and again, 2030, the human brain will be started to be connected to artificial intelligence. And I'm quoting Kurzweil here. And then artificial intelligence will do more and more of human thinking until there is no human thought and artificial intelligence is doing it all. Now, why are they openly saying this now? Because the sales pitch is it will make us superhuman. So isn't that great? And all this getting the population, especially the young, or will be the adults then, addicted to technology is all about the here, kitty, 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 preparing people to accept this. So you've got that agenda at the end of this road of the human mind as we know it being replaced by artificial intelligence. But out of the same, as I was mentioning a few minutes ago, out of the same devil's playground, Silicon Valley, is coming the Google, Facebook, etc., algorithmic censorship more and more of the alternative media using various excuses. Because what they do is this, they'll give you an excuse, oh, we've got to stop jihadis. Okay, right. So, oh yeah, we'll stop jihadis. Okay. And then they widen it and widen it. It's not jihadis anymore, it's people like me. It's and other people that are questioning the official narrative, and they pull them in. So the alternative media is under tremendous pressure now and suppression because it's challenging the narrative, and that changes perception. Change perception, you change the world.
Did the Illuminati, I don't know what we call them, did they see the devil's playground coming? Or is the technology a bump in their plans?
Oh, they created it.
They created it.
You see, this is another...
What do we call them? Because when you talk about the reptilian shapeshifters, even in your live events, you say, okay, here we go. If you haven't heard this before, you're going to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about the reptilian shapeshifters. And then you talk about it. So can you talk about them? And is it the Illuminati and everything that goes around it? And why do you qualify that for the newbies in the room? Because you didn't believe it at first.
Well, I did not believe it. I just put it on the back burner when I first started hearing this information. That's what I do. If I hear something that's, fantastic, what most people will do because of this perceptual download, this postage stamp consensus, they'll say, load of rubbish, basically doing that. But what I've done over the years is said, oh, well, okay, that's interesting. So we'll put it on the back burner and we'll see what else comes. And then more information comes, and then you go somewhere else, more information comes from unconnected sources over a period of time. And eventually it crosses the line where you think, look, there's something going on here, because this is just too much now. I've got too much information, too much corroboration, too much supporting evidence and experience. But, it's an interesting point, this whole thing about non-human manipulation of human society. Because this perceptual download, the postage stamp consensus, is so narrow in its sense of the possible that almost everything in eternity is rejected by the postage stamp, by reflex action. One of the things you get is, I bet you believe in little green men and all this stuff. Well, hold on, let's just take a perspective here. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists in the universe. Some say it's a bit more, but not much. Visible light, which is the only frequency band that we can see, is a fraction, a tiny fraction, of the 0.005%. So humans, compared with what exists even in this universe, are basically blind. We don't live in a world, we live in a band of frequency. Actually, we live in an information source if you go deeper. And then you look at according to mainstream science's projection of the size of the universe, compared with that, planet Earth is the equivalent of 1/1000th of a pinhead. Now, the postage stamp program is so all-pervading, and the suppression of information, like I've just said, in the mainstream is all-pervading, that people laugh at the fact that this world could be manipulated by a non-human force when they can see a tiny fraction of 0.005% on a planet equivalent to a billionth size of a pinhead. And see, the key to keeping people in perceptual servitude is to suppress the nature of reality itself. Because if people realize what I've just said, they are far more likely to say, well, hold on a minute then. If we can't see almost anything, then what else exists? Well, hold on a second. Look at the diversity of form in the human form, never mind the animal world and the insect world, that's operating within that tiny band of frequency. What the heck exists in terms of diversity of form beyond that, which is in the almost entirety of existence that we can't see? And when you come from that perspective, then non-human entities, that many taking a reptilian form, becomes far less fantastic than if you're coming from postage stamp consensus, which is waving it away by reflex action, load of rubbish. And, I've not sat in a darkened room pulling this out of the ether. I've researched all over the world. And when you have ancient cultures all over the world who are describing non-human entities in the unseen, which is almost what isn't unseen to the humans in the way that I've just described, many taking a reptilian form. And that has passed through the ages. And then you meet people in places like America, because once you start talking about this, you become someone that people will give information to because they can see a way of getting out to the public arena. because you won't think they're crazy. And they're telling you the same. You know, people who've been in mind control projects, people who've been in government projects, who've interacted with these entities in underground bases. And they're describing what the ancients described. When you've got this man who unfortunately just died in his 90s, William Tompkins, writing a book in 2015, describing how he was seconded in 1942 into a top secret naval intelligence operation in America based at the naval base at San Diego, where his role, or the role of that organization, was to interact with non-human entities. And he produces documents, he produces pictures of people he was with to support what he claims. And he's saying world governments are controlled by a reptilian non-human race. I've been saying that since the 90s.
Who are these people? Royal family, reptiles. Trump?
Well, let's look at how it works. First of all, these entities operate in the unseen, overwhelmingly in the unseen. Because we, like I said earlier, live in a frequency band, a band of frequency. Anything beyond that frequency we can't see, we're not aware of. And, you know, people have no trouble accepting that the old analog system of radio and television stations are different frequencies sharing the same space without interfering with each other unless they're really close on the dial. You know, the analog system, BBC One and ITV and CNN, they're sharing the same space, but they're just on different frequencies. And the television picks up different frequencies as you change the channel. Well, in the same way, worlds or realities, it's a better term, are sharing the same space without interfering with each other unless they're very close on the dial. And at that point where they're close on the dial and there is some form of interaction, that's what we call ghosts and paranormal activity. And so these, not just reptilian, but other non-human entities, are operating just outside of the human sight. And they have to have vehicles within our frequency band, within our world, that represent their interests, that are basically vehicles for them to manipulate our society. And so particular bloodlines were created that are hybrids, part reptilian, not always reptilian, but part reptilian, part human, which is the origin of the royal aristocratic bloodline whole order of the ages. You know, the ancient Chinese emperors used to claim the right to be emperor because of their descendants from the serpent gods. And the reason that these royal bloodlines and aristocratic bloodlines have incessantly, obsessively interbred is because they're holding this hybrid genetic program. And for a long time, they ruled because they were the special bloodline. What is it? Just down the road from us now in London, we have a head of state, even today, who is head of state because of her bloodline.
The Queen.
The Queen. If she was a different bloodline, she might be cleaning the throne, not sitting on it. This is the nonsense of it. Why are you queen? Because someone had sex with someone and that person was born first, therefore they're the monarch. Sorry, I thought we lived in a civilized society with some form of intelligence. What's going on? But across much of the world, as humanity started to awaken a bit more from its civility to these royal bloodlines, they couldn't sustain it any longer. And so the royal in-your-face control started to disperse. It's still around in some areas, like we still have a monarchy in here and the Commonwealth countries, but in lots of countries it disappeared. But these bloodlines didn't. And their sense of being special and being, quote, royal never ended either. And so they moved into the dark suit professions of banking, of politics, of all the dark suit professions, government administration, etc. And they've gone on running the show ever since, while not being overtly royal. And of course, what happened with the so-called Great British Empire and these other European empires is these bloodlines went all over the world, and they imposed themselves in the North America, in South America, in Australia, all over the world. And they've gone on controlling ever since. But when you look at the situation from just a general population perspective, everything seems to be unconnected. People seem to be unconnected. But when you go deep into the shadows, they're not unconnected. What you have is a structure, a global structure, which is like a spider's web. A very good way of describing it. At the center is the spider. That's this reptilian and other non-human force, which is operating in the unseen. The strands immediately around the spider are the most exclusive secret societies.
Such as?
Well, you won't even be able to name them. Some of them don't even have names, so they're harder to establish. They're really exclusive groupings of people who are close enough to the spider to know the big picture. You come out from them, they're people you'll never see in the public arena. You come out from them, and then you start hitting secret societies that we do know of. And when I say the Freemasons, Knights of Malta, Knights Templar, the inner circle of the Jesuit order, Opus Dei, etc., I'm not talking about everybody who's a Freemason. Nothing like. These structures, not these secret societies, are fiercely compartmentalized. You're looking at the inner core of these organizations, not most of its membership, who are clueless about what that organization is really about. But the people within these secret societies who are kept in the dark are a wonderful front, unknowing front, which these others can hide behind. So you keep coming out from the spider, and eventually you hit what I call the cusp organizations, where the hidden meets the seen. So here you will find the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations in America, the Trilateral Commission, the Club of Rome, which was created to manipulate the environment to justify global transformation, and organizations like that. And then you come into the scene, and you're into governments, you're into the banking system, you're into corporations, you're into media ownership, etc. And to the public looking on, the decisions that impact upon the world and impact upon their lives are being made in the world of the seen, being made by politicians, they're being made by bankers and what have you. But ultimately, the plan for the total subjugation of humankind is coming from the spider, and it's playing out through this structure. And this is why, what I've been doing, Brian, is I've been going around the world in the last 18 months talking. What I've been setting out in this 10-hour talk is the background and also the wish list, how they want the world to change and how they want to change it and what they want to introduce. So every time I go into a country, I usually get there 4 or 5 days early, and I've got a checklist from the talk of all the things that, because America's further ahead of anybody, and Britain too, but what I have this checklist, and it might be Australia, it might be the Balkans, it might be Serbia and those countries, it might be anywhere in Europe, it might be America, Canada. Every time I go into a country, check, 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 check.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.